Call to order. City Commission meeting of Tuesday, March 20th, 2018. Let the record show one commissioner is absent, Mr. Steiner. First item up is the order of business. Mr. Kessel.
Thank you, Commission President Decker. I do have a couple of items that I'd like to request be moved around on the agenda. The first is under the consent agenda, item 2D, the 2018 Hazardous Tree Removal Improvement District. If we could move that to 4E, that would be appreciated, and then just simply move 4E, the current 4E reports down to 4F. And then the other item is our 515 presenter was called away and will not be able to make it this evening. So if we could eliminate the 515, we'll have the presentation at a future City Commission meeting, just not this one. If we do happen to complete the agenda by or before 5:15, our 5:30 presenters are more than willing to move up to 5:15 and begin at that time.
Okay. And then even though we've advertised it at 5:30, we're okay moving them up?
Yeah, we should.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
It's not an item that you're taking any action on this evening.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Kessel on the order of business? Not, I would look for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion to approve the order of business. Any further questions for Mr. Kessel or staff? All in favor of the order of business, state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Order of business is approved. Next item up is our consent agenda. We've had one amendment to the consent agenda. Is there anything else on the consent agenda that commissioners would like to present questions or have answered from staff?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
We have a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Second.
With a second. Any further questions? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Mr. Friedrich?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Consent agenda is approved. As Mr. Kessel stated, we have two timetable agendas. One at 5 o'clock, the state of the schools, and one right now at 5:30, medical marijuana presentation. We'll move on to non-timetable. The first item up is the monthly financial report. Accountant Morey.
Thank you, President Decker and members of the Commission. Jumping right into it, just a recap of our Treasurer's Report that was included in your packet. You're not going to see any major fluctuations between this month and the prior month's report. It's going to be a pretty consistent report. Most of our major bond payments, things of that sort, that would really have a big impact on this number will come out later in the year. So you won't see those in this month. And then also from part of their Treasurer's Report, the investments, part of that $35 million that you saw in your packet as well. Again, there was no major contributions, no major disbursements in January of 2018. So these numbers will be consistent with the prior month report. And then moving on to the 1% sales tax collections. As you can see, we had a pretty significant jump in our February collection from February of 2017. We actually are 13% higher in February of 2018 than we were in February of 2017. And our total 1.5% sales tax collection put together was over $100,000 higher this year than it was in the prior year. I believe the February 2018 collection would reflect what you'd see around the holiday season. So that's why that number is significantly higher than it was in the previous month. And then the half percent sales tax breakdown, you'll see the same trend. It's exactly half of the 1%. But we show this to show the Commission that these are recognized in separate funds. So that's why we present them as two different slides. And then moving on to the hospitality tax, we also saw an increase in hospitality tax from February of 17 to February of 18. It was actually a 27% increase. We were down 2% in January of 18 from January of 17. So the increase in February does more than make up for that increase, or decrease, excuse me. And oil impact, which has been mentioned at the previous months as well, the payment towards Dickinson State University's $2.5 million is still being taken out. So that's the reason for the big disparity between 17 and 18. Later in the year, that payment should be made up or should be completed around June. So then hopefully after that point, we can start have an easier comparison to where we were at in 2017. And then finally, we just wanted to include a snapshot of the receivables and payables age report that you saw in your packet. Again, these numbers, the breakdown is included in your packet. So if you have specific questions on a specific vendor or a specific customer, we can get that information back to you. But this is just an overview of that information. So if there's any questions at that time, I'll do my best to answer them. And also, city staff recommends approval.
All right, thank you, Mr. Maury. Any questions for Mr. Maury?
I see that you include the hospitality tax, but not the occupancy tax. Is there a reason for that?
The main reason we do that is because the money is paid directly to the Convention and Visitors Bureau. We
Right.
do take a 0.5% admin fee out of those collections, but if it's something, Commissioner Olmans, you'd be interested to see, we can absolutely throw a slide for occupancy in as well.
I think so. It'd be good for us to track where they're at with that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Maury? Now I'd look for a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve
Second.
with a second. Any further questions or comments from Mr. Maury or staff?
My only comment is I just want to thank you for putting this together. I think it's so beneficial to see this monthly and to be able to keep track of it, and especially to compare it from years prior. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Shustin.
Hearing no other questions, we'll go ahead and vote. Mr. Altmans?
Aye.
Mr. Friedrich?
Aye.
Mrs. Jennings?
Aye.
Switched it up on you. Chair votes aye. The monthly financial report is approved.
Thank you.
Next up is HR Coordinator Nominuk with our Human Resources.
Good evening, President Decker, Commissioners. The first item I have is for our pay scale. We're looking to add another line to our pay scale. Currently, our pay scale is broken into two sections. The top half is for our hourly non-exempt staff, and the bottom half is listing all of our salaried exempt staff. With the 2018 budget, the commission approved for an administrative lieutenant position. That position the job description has been reviewed, updated, and scored, and is ready to go. However, we don't have room for it in the structure of our pay scale that we currently have. So this position, based on the Fair Labor Standards Act's rules on whether it's exempt or non-exempt, does fall into the non-exempt category. And in our pay scale, the very last grade that we have in our pay scale is where the police sergeant would fit. So for the lieutenant, there isn't any room. So staff has worked on adding another pay scale, one more line, one more grade to that pay scale for that position or any other positions that would fall into that same kind of a situation. So I had the accounting department help me out with this and came up with a grade that we feel fits with the rest of the way the other grades are laid out in the pay scale. So we're asking for that position or that pay grade to be added. It would start out at $29.68, and then it goes all the way up to 12 steps, which is very similar to the two grade levels right above it.
Okay, any questions for Mrs. Nominuk? And you said at the beginning, your statement, we did put that in our 2018 budget for this
Yes.
lieutenant position.
Yep.
So-
The job description the job description's approved, the
Okay.
position is approved. It's just that we need to place for it in the pay scale.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I would look for a motion on this item.
Mr. President, I would move to approve the position within the wage scale.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion to approve and a second. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mrs. Trustum.
Aye.
Mr. Altman.
Aye.
Mr. Friedrich.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Position is approved.
Thank you.
And then next up, we have a recycling coordinator job.
Yes, and our Public Works Director Zuroff has commented in other meetings to you of the need for a recycling coordinator. So we have been working on a job description for this. We are looking at bringing on a new position, solid waste recycling and collections coordinator will be the title of this position. And their plans are to have this position plan and organize the city's recycling, their solid waste diversion and reduction programs. This position will supervise all of those staff in performing manual and skilled duties. They'll oversee the curbside pickup and drop-off centers. They'll prepare and present educational programs and public information and promote the recycling and waste reduction. They'll also assist in developing programs and goals and plans, policies and procedures, all of that relates to city code policies and procedures, and all of that will be distributed out to and trained to the general public as well. So in looking over this position and scoring it and rating it, we're also looking at this position to have a requirement of an associate's degree. And then we also are looking for the position to have at least 3 years directly related experience, or an equivalent combination of the two of them. So in doing that, we've scored out the position. It falls in a class 4, grade 6, and comes out to 750 points. This will also be a non-exempt position.
Any questions for Mrs. Nominuk on this position?
Ms. Nominuk, what will this pay scale be at that?
This would be at a grade 4. So the starting pay, the bottom of the pay scale is $24.60 an hour, and then it has 12 steps, so it could go up to $37.93 in 12 steps.
And this ended up being kind of a hybrid position. When it was first presented to us, it seemed more PR and public awareness, but there's some components of being able to operate a forklift and some of those components that go with it too. So it's
Right.
more than just a PR position.
Right, and I agree with you. I think at first, that's gonna be the concentration, that's gonna be a big thing right up front. But as the recycling program gets going and we're, everyone's feeling a little more comfortable, their intent is for this to be taking over some of the other duties in the Baylor building. And will they be running a forklift all the time? I'm not sure, but, they may have some of those duties with the recycling and the bins and things like that that they will be using.
So it really is a hybrid position
Mhm.
from where we started.
Right.
Okay.
So at that scale, starting pay is around that 50,000 mark, I would guess?
Yes, correct. And that's very similar. We have a, kind of our structure in Public Works is chief operators. This is very similar to what the chief operators would be, is being the same pay scale. They would be supervising, overlooking staff, that sort of thing.
Any more questions for Mrs. Nominuk on this position? If not, I would look for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion
the
to
job
approve.
description.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Hearing no further questions, we'll go ahead and vote. Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Friedrich?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Position is approved.
Thank you.
Next up, we have the Southwest Water Commission, Mr. Kessel.
Thank you, Commission President Decker. Commission, you have had 4 different people, citizens, fill out forms saying they're interested in being appointed to the Southwest Water Commission. 3 of those 4 happen to be eligible currently. We have one of those individuals, Mr. Nodland, who is not eligible today, but will be in June. He is building a home, and it is expected to be completed in June. So you have, I believe, 4 options in front of you tonight. You can either not appoint anybody and wait until the election, and any interested party could fill out and run for election at that time. Your second option would be to appoint tonight one of the 3 eligible candidates that is provided with their interest form to you. A third option would be to wait until June. If you wanted to appoint Mr. Nodland, you could do that. And your fourth option would be to re-advertise and try to get additional applicants in addition to the 4 that you have this evening. So you've had a period of time to go over your due diligence with regards to the applicants, and so the options are up to you this evening on how you'd like to proceed.
Can you remind the public again how long this term is?
This is completing the term, so I believe it's another year, a little over a year, if I'm not mistaken. Sorry, I don't have the exact date
Okay.
in front of me.
I think it's over 2 years. It'll be over 2 years. With,
Over 2 years.
Yeah.
So 2020? Okay.
And Mr. Bars is nodding out in the crowd, so
Are there,
I am correct.
are there any candidates in the audience?
I don't see
Don't
any.
believe so, I can't, yeah.
I don't see any of them, no. I think we have some great candidates. So I guess I would defer to commissioners. I guess if there was any personal interaction, if they spoke with anyone about, you know, them wanting this position, but I think we should appoint somebody, are my personal feelings.
I guess I did speak to Mr. Nodland, but we did discuss that he's not available till, I mean, he can't really do it till June, so.
Right.
And I don't even know if that's a hard, like, his house will be done by June,
Well, yeah.
you know,
Right.
so.
Well, and if he's not available till June, appointing him would make no sense if you
Right.
could put it on the ballot.
Right.
Right.
I personally spoke with Mr. Benz. I don't know if anyone else spoke with him. He visited with me. He had a lot of great things to say. I forgot my note sheet, but he has a little bit of background that would make him, I think, a unique candidate for the position. But that's the only one I heard from personally.
I have personally spoke with 3 of the 4 candidates, and you know, Mr. Nodland would be a great choice because of his background in the state legislature and serving on the state water board, but at this moment he doesn't, you know, he doesn't qualify. And I think we do need to put somebody in there. I had spoke with Mr. Sullivan and Mr. Benz, so like I said, I would defer to the commissioners if there's a nomination that you feel comfortable with, and then
I
if
think-
not, we can wait.
Yeah, I think that would be the way to go if there's a nomination. We can move on that. If not, then
So based on your conversations with the 3, who did you see as the most fitting candidate?
That fits into the water board right now, with an appointment that can start work with the water board right now would be Mr. Benz. Because the other 2 candidates basically are on the outside until about that June, July timeframe. So,
That is correct. Mr. Sullivan clarified that his duties will take him up until June, and after June, he'd be more than happy to join the board in his full capacity.
And I'm comfortable with making that nomination of Jason Benz, per our discussion that we had, and his ability to fulfill the duties of that board now.
Okay. So we have a nomination of Jason Benz to the Southwest Water Commission. Any further discussion, or? I know we've done this one time before, Mr. Kessel. We need a second on the nomination.
Yeah.
Okay. So then I will look for a second to the nomination, and then we'll take a roll call vote.
I would second that nomination.
So we have a motion to appoint Mr. Benz to the Southwest Water Commission with a second. Any further discussions or questions? Now we'll take a vote on the nomination. Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Friedrich?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Mr. Benz is appointed to the Southwest Water Commission. Next up, we have about 9 minutes. I think we can cover a few of these things. We have a beer-only liquor license request from the Expedition League. Mr. Kessel.
Thank you. As all of you are aware, there will be a new minor league baseball team in Dickinson beginning this summer. The Dickinson Big Sticks, they'll be in the Expedition League, and we have an application then from that league to run or to provide beer at the games and the events. We did do the background check on 3 different people, Steve Wagner, Connie Wagner, and Jason Watson. They had nothing that would flag any issues related to the issuance of a beer license. The applicant's location, I provided you all with a picture of what it would look like. They will not be selling beer out of the regular concession stands. They have to comply with all of our ordinances, and most of the people that are in those concession stands aren't old enough to dispense beer. So they'll actually have a beer garden that'll be located on grounds, and that will be where the sales will take place, so that they can comply with all of our city codes and ordinances. So all of the information that we have appears to be complete on the application. This is a non-limited beer or license, and so the recommendation from city staff is to award a beer-only license to the Expedition League Incorporated. And I'll stand for any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Kessel?
Are they gonna set some serving limitations, like they're gonna stop serving at the 6th inning or something, or? Were we gonna put any restrictions on them, so people aren't drinking into the 9th inning, or?
Commissioner Friedrich, that's a great question. It's not one that our ordinances do not require that kind of a limitation. I have not asked them that question if they intend to do so on their own, a self-limitation. But that's an excellent question that I can ask of them and get.
There is a representative in the crowd, so I guess we could,
If you'd like to respond.
if you'd like to respond. And while he's coming, well, we'll have him introduce himself.
I am Jason Watson. I'm the general manager of the Badlands Big Sticks, which is incorporated with the Expedition League. To answer the question, it'd be just like any other minor league baseball game or major league baseball game. After the 7th inning, then we would discontinue sales.
And then I guess my question would be, if this proves to be a pretty popular option at the park, there is limitations on the growth area there. Would this license allow them to, say, set one up down the left field pole? Or do they have to have one location?
No, Commission President Decker, they would not be restricted to simply one. They would at this time, because as all of our alcohol or liquor license holders, they all have to submit a map of where beer sales will happen. They have submitted one with a location.
Okay.
They certainly can come back and submit a secondary application with a new location, but they couldn't start sales at the second location without your approval.
Okay. Like I said, if it just becomes a very popular part of the, the experience, that they have the option to, maybe have multiple locations. So, because you are limited for space down
Right.
there.
So with the beer garden, will the beer need to be consumed in the beer garden, or you can buy it there and take it back to your seat? How?
You would have to consume it in the beer garden.
Okay.
And I would suppose to allow it into the stands would be a whole another,
We'd need a new map and a new application.
I'm just saying, because most, ball
Most people
games you
do.
go to, there's beer in every section except for what they deem the family section.
We
So-
can have an updated map location presented as well.
Okay.
Is that your preference?
What's that?
Is it your preference to let them take it back to their seat?
Ideally, if we can make it work, we'd like to have kind of 2 kiosks up on the main level away from the concession, and then in the beer garden area. So then they would be able to purchase it and go sit in the stands.
And I'm sure that's something our legal department can look at.
If that is, my suggestion tonight would be, if you want to revise your application, is that we table this item this evening and come back at our April meeting with those revisions. Obviously, you're not having any games between now and then, so that'd be my recommendation to
Okay.
the commission.
So is that something you would like to do?
Yeah, we can do, I
Okay.
can present an updated list of, or a map of exactly what we're kind of looking at.
Rather than do this
Sure.
a second time?
Yeah. Well, I'll say it's pretty exciting to have this come to Dickinson. I know you guys are still looking for host homes, and since this is on Channel 19, if anybody's interested, you want to give them the information of who they need to contact if they're interested in being a host home?
Yep, we have on our website, badlandsbigsticks.com, there's a spot on there for people who are inquiring about possibly being a host family. Also, you can call 483-STIX, S-T-I-X. I'm not sure what those numbers are, though, so we'll just call it STIX. But so that's just reaching out. If anybody is interested, this is such a big part of what we're trying to do. Allowing, which is tough, allowing strangers, into your home. But me as a former coach in 2 of these leagues, I stayed with host families. It's a relationship that you develop with these families, especially families that have younger kids. So, definitely anyone who is interested, please contact us, and we can definitely get the information out.
Mr. Watson, what are the requirements for a host family?
Pretty much a bed and some food. So, and it's more or less breakfast food, because what we do is we feed all of our players and the opposing players a pregame meal, and we also feed both teams after the game. So, it's more or less just opening up your house. We do play at home. They're going to eat breakfast. They're going to go to the gym. Then they got to be at the park. So the amount of time at the houses is not a lot. It's just kind of, when we are at home, just pretty much a bed for them to sleep in.
And just for the general public, what is the typical start of the game that we're looking at?
Monday through Saturday will be 6:35, and then on Sundays would be 5:35.
So just a little bit of a variation there. And I'm sure you're juggling at that with the American Legion schedule and everybody else that
Yep.
uses that.
Yeah, we've worked really well with Dickinson Baseball Club and Park and Rec. Pretty much the whole schedule is already set, which there's gonna be a lot of baseball games down at the field this summer, which is
That's
good.
awesome.
It is. When's the first home game?
First home game is June 1st.
Perfect.
Friday is that first weekend. In June, we play quite a bit at home, pretty much every weekend in June.
I think it's an awesome addition to our city.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And do you want to mention your meet and greet you have scheduled?
Oh, yes, on June 22nd,
May 20th.
May 22nd, sorry. May 22nd, we'll do a meet and greet down at the park with, as part of the business after hours with the chamber. So we're going to invite all of our host families. Majority, if not all of our players will be there, so it'll be a good opportunity for people in the community to come out and meet the players, the coaching staff, you know, our higher ups in our team, I guess, if you want to call it that. You know, it'll be a good opportunity for everyone just to kind of get to meet the big sticks, and you know, we'll have some hot dogs and brats going. And one thing we are going to do with, as far as the kids go for all the games, we're going to have the big jumping castle in the kids zone, because we really want to make these games a family atmosphere. You know, and with games in between, you know, dizzy bat race, kids running the bases after the game, stuff like that. So, you know, we're all excited about it. We think it's going to be great, and you know, the feedback we've received from the community so far is, you know, everybody's excited as well.
That's good. Good things are happening.
Yep.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I guess I would look for a motion then to table this.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion to table and a second. We'll go ahead and vote. Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Mr. Friedrich?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We have tabled the beer license for the Big Sticks. So, first timetable, 5 o'clock, State of the Schools. Superintendent Dr. Sullivan.
I have to figure this out on my own. Mr. President, members of the commission, thank you so much for allowing me to be here for my annual report to the commissioners on the state of the schools. And I do truly appreciate your time this evening, and hopefully you'll find this information to be informative and helpful. You all have a copy of this, so I will not belabor this. This is the district's vision and mission statement that is contained in the school district strategic plan. Strategic plan was developed approximately 7 years ago, 2 years after I arrived in the school district. These are the current school board members. We do have an election coming up in June, when 3 of these school board members are up for election: Mr. Rodakowski, Mrs. Rude, and Mrs. Schwartz. And so if you're interested in serving on the school board, you can pick up an application in my office. This is the school district organization. That will change next year with the addition of Berg coming online. And you should begin to see work going on at Berg next week, as they're going to start the demolition on the interior of the building. These are some demographics that I like to share with the community and with the commission. In October, we had 3,671 students, 647 special education students, 139 English language learners speaking 24 different languages. That is an area that's a significant challenge for the school district in terms of providing appropriate services for our English language learners. When I arrived in the Dickinson Public Schools in 2009, there were 0 English language learners in the school district. So that's been a significant change over the course of the past 9 years. You can see we have approximately 654 total employees, making us one of the largest employers in Stark County. This is Dickinson High School, which was built in 1968. As you're probably aware, the school board has been having public forums and conversations with the school faculty and the community about the future of Dickinson High School. The school district is currently in the process of seeking requests for proposals regarding architectural services to help continue moving that process forward. The current enrollment in October was 936, and we have a small senior class graduating this year, I believe of about 180 students that will be replaced by a much larger 8th grade class. So Dickinson High School next year will either approach or exceed 1,000 students. And so thus the need for taking a look at the facility and the infrastructure of that building as we continue to prepare for these larger classes that are coming forward. This is the enrollment trend for Dickinson High School since the 2009 and 10 school year. You can see we hit our low in 2012 and 13 of 747 students, and since then we have increased by approximately 200 students in 5 school years. With the smaller classes going out being replaced by larger classes, that trend should just continue to creep upward over the course of the next few years. This is the Hagan Building, which currently houses our Southwest Community High School, the Adult Learning Center, West Dakota Parent Family Resource Center, and some office spaces. And Hagan is still a very strong, useful building for the school district, and does provide the school district with a lot of flexibility in terms of housing alternative programs for the school district that provide a very important service for our students and our parents. This is Berg, which, as I said, will reopen next year. It's scheduled to reopen as a K-4 school, and then will be K-5 in 2019, 2020. We're currently working on how many students are going to be in that building, but you will begin to see work going on in that building with the interior demolition and remodel, and then the repairs and renovation of the playground on the exterior side of the building. These are the enrollment trends in grades 6 through 8. As you undoubtedly remember, last year we had a junior high of 7 and 8, and Berg was a 6th grade center, so we combined those numbers together so that we had an accurate number. You can see in 2009 and 10 there were 539 students in that building, and since then, during my time in the school district, we have increased by approximately 300 students in those 3 grade levels. Dickinson Middle School, which opened this year in 2017, serves grades 6, 7, and 8, and currently has an enrollment a little bit over 800 students. Heart River was built in 1982. There are discussions currently going on at the school board level about the Heart River facility. The school board is trying to prepare for what appears to be larger incoming kindergarten classes as we continue to move forward and receive students. You've probably seen the live birth rates that happen at the hospital, and those will always equate to larger class sizes in the public school system. The school board is having conversations about addressing the HVAC system in the building and over-engineering it to turn Heart River possibly into a 4-section per grade level school. That renovation on the HVAC may happen this summer, but the school board has not made that decision at this time. And Heart River is one alternative that the school district has to address the increasing K-5 elementary enrollment. The other alternative I'll show you in a slide in just a few minutes. Roosevelt was built in 1920 as our oldest building. It's a 2-section school per grade level and currently has an enrollment of approximately 270 students. While it is an old facility, Roosevelt is still in strong condition and can still serve the community for years to come. Jefferson Elementary, built in 1963, a 3-section school. We did put an addition onto Jefferson Elementary on 2011 during the boom and expand the number of classrooms. The enrollment at Jefferson is currently 375 students. This is Lincoln Elementary. That was built in 1958. As you can see, we also put an addition onto Lincoln in 2011 to address the boom and the increasing enrollment. And Lincoln is also a 3-section per grade level school with an enrollment of approximately 384 students. This is the enrollment trend for our K-5 students. Since the 2009-2010 school year, we've had an increase of approximately 650 students during the last 8 school years. And so, as we all know, the number of students in the public school system has increased on all levels. This is our projected number of kindergarten students, and please know that this is based on live births, and I always have to put the provision out there that if these numbers hold, because this is not an exact science doing this projection. And I will tell the commission that right now, our kindergarten class for 2018 is running a little bit behind this projection. But we are going to send out a reminder to our parents that if they have not yet registered for kindergarten, to please come in and do so. Right now, we're trending to have approximately the same number of kindergarten students next year that we have this year. But as I said, it's not an exact science, and so we're still working to refine that number as we get closer to the end of the school year. Based on the live birth rates and taking a look at the ratios in the school district in terms of how many of those live births actually enroll, you can see that the trend is, no matter what the number, the kindergarten classes are going to continue to grow. This is Prairie Rose, our newest elementary school, built in 2013. This is a 4-section per grade level school. We have, in October, 513 students in that building. We have had up to 525 students in that building. So this is without a doubt our largest K-5 building in the school district. This is the other location that the school board has that provides the school district with flexibility in terms of future expansion for either K-5 or whatever the needs of the school district may be that the school board determines need to be addressed. We purchased this land and took ownership of this land in January of 2018. As you can see, it is 114 acres located just east of the middle school on 21st Street. These are the projections that we have moving forward in terms of enrollment based on live births in the school district. You can see that in the fall of 2017, as I said earlier, we had 3,673 students. If the numbers hold, the potential is that that could increase dramatically in the next 4 years. Whether it will be an actual 1,000 student increase is very difficult to say at this time. But the point that I think is very important for the community and the commission to understand is it does present some challenges for the school district. I have informed the school board that in my estimated opinion, not only do they need to address the needs of Dickinson High School, but they're simultaneously going to need to prepare to address needs in K-5 if the live birth numbers equate to kindergarten classes that are projected to be much higher than they currently are. These are the taxes in the school district. You can see that this school year we had a 15 mil increase. I thought it would be important to explain to the community and the commission why that happened. That happened for 2 large reasons. One, all of the bonds for the middle school are now on the books, and we are now paying for the full $65 million that the community approved for the construction of the new middle school. And in addition to that, we saw an approximately 5% decrease in our taxable valuation this year because of the slowdown. Those 2 factors combined contributed significantly to the 15 mil increase for this school year. I want to share this slide, which I'm hoping will be informative, because this is the current classroom capacity when we reopen Berg next year as a 2-section school for K-5 classrooms in the Dickinson Public Schools, 96 classrooms. We've done an audit of the school district, and we figured that if we had to put people on stages and put people in closets, we could probably come up with another 6 classrooms. So that would take it to 102. If we assume that our kindergarten classes are not going to grow for the next 5 years, we currently have approximately 360 kindergarten students, which is 18 kindergarten sections, when we apply the school board's recommended class size of 20. If we assume that those kindergarten classes are never going to increase for the next 4 school years, this is what it looks like with no increase. And so the point that I made to the school board when I presented them with this slide is they have to pay attention, and we need to pay attention as a school district and as a community to the class sizes that are coming into the school district to make sure that the school district is properly prepared to address the impending enrollment increases. Yeah, Mr. President, that concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions that may be asked.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. Any questions, commissioners? Comments? I know the numbers that you presented, we have also presented repeatedly to the legislature. And the last time I was there 2 weeks ago, I made a point of how we're growing and what the school system has to deal with and how that is going to affect us as a city. Not only in more infrastructure, but also in staffing. Address the SROs. And I think it's, the one thing that was brought up is we as a community need to talk to our legislative body and address the way they fund you guys and how GPT money affects, even though you get it.
We don't get it all.
You don't get it all. So, one person did tell us this is a good problem to have, growth, but in the end, we all have to look at, what it's gonna cost us.
Right.
So it is a good problem to have, that we're growing as a city. I think the thing that it just amazes me is you have 406 kindergartners roughly this year, and we're graduating a class of
180.
180.
Yeah.
So you think about that first grade class next year is double the size of what just graduated.
Right.
And as we become more attractive as a city, and as we were told at the Main Street Initiative, the city with the most potential in the state, I can think we're just going to get more and more people to want to relocate and call Dickinson home, which I think is great. But we do need to take these numbers and keep on the people that are going to help us with the funding. So, Mr. Kessel.
Thank you, President Decker. Superintendent Sullivan, I happen to be the president of the WDEA this year, and we're having a meeting next week in Bismarck, and we've decided to create a task force especially for education. And Superintendent Steve Holen from Watford City is taking on that task force. I'd like to invite you today, if you'd like to attend. We're going to have a breakout session as part of our WDA meeting, and Senate Majority Leader Rich Wardner is going to be present, along with several other members. So if you'd like to attend, I'd certainly like to extend that invitation to you. I can get you the details after the meeting.
Mr. President, Mr. Kessel, if I can work in my schedule, I'd be happy to attend, and so if you can send me an email, that'd be great.
Dr. Sullivan, where is the district at in hiring? I know the numbers are scary looking into next year. How is that going?
Mr. President, Ms. Trustham, we're making progress, but it is much more challenging to hire teachers today than it was 33 years ago when I became a superintendent. We're in the process of making arrangements to send some administrators to some career fairs in Minnesota to see, or excuse me, that's not correct, in Michigan, to see if we can do some recruitment. And we're very actively doing as much interviewing as we can at this time, as quickly as we can. So we're still short some K-5 teachers, we're still short some special education teachers, so we still have some hills to climb up.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Oh,
On a side note, congratulations on your retirement, and thank you for all the years of service that you've given to this community.
Well, Commissioner Oltmans, I'll tell you that I do appreciate that comment. It has truly been my pleasure to serve the community and the children of the Dickinson, North Dakota. And I've been blessed to be able to work with very dedicated and strong employees in the school district in terms of the faculty, staff, and administrators. And in 9 years, we've built 2 schools. We've added on to 2 other schools. And I'm going to brag a little bit that on the 2017 North Dakota State Assessment, on an aggregated district-wide basis, the Dickinson Public Schools had the 4th highest scores amongst Class A schools in math, and the 5th highest scores amongst Class A schools in language arts. So with all the challenges we face, we're still continuing to provide a high-quality education, and it's due to the dedication and the commitment of the people that stand in front of our students and work for them every day. But it has been my pleasure to serve this community and the students, and again, I thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go back to the non-timetable agenda. We have an item that was added, and that is item E, Mr. Kessel. It's a hazardous tree removal improvement district.
I think Attorney Murtha's going to take that one.
Okay.
Oh, I apologize. I guess she's not taking that one. Sorry. One second. So what you have before you is a resolution that will establish the hazardous tree removal improvement district. We do this on an annual basis. It allows us to not only test and mark and identify trees out there that could cause damage if they aren't dealt with, but it allows us to go on properties and such. So we would recommend approval of the resolution this evening. And it does allow, we can amortize the cost of the tree removal. We can put it on their property taxes if they choose to defray the expense, or at least extend it over a course of time. So,
And I think one important thing that property owners need to know about this resolution, it does not require them to participate in it, if I'm correct. I mean,
if we identify you don't have to participate.
Right.
That's true.
yeah, because the very last statement in the resolution says no property owner shall be required to participate in said district.
Yeah.
So, but it is a tool that you can use, like Mr. Kessel said, to spread out the costs.
So if your tree is identified, you are required to remove it, but this offers you the opportunity to spread that cost out over time, or you can simply, as a homeowner, pay
Right.
the expense
Right.
upfront. But either way, the tree would have to be removed. You're
it's
not
a-
excluded
right.
from that, but you do have some options as far as how you approach the financing.
Kind of like our sidewalks. You can
Exactly.
participate or choose to do it yourself, so.
That's correct.
So, the resolution number on this,
6/2018.
6/2018. Okay, so I would look for a motion on resolution 6/2018.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
A motion to approve. Any further discussions or questions for staff? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Altman.
Aye.
Mr. Friedrich.
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Resolution is passed. Let's see, Mr. Kessel, you will move right into reports then.
Thank you, Commission President Decker. You have before you the Sunrise Youth Bureau Annual Report. If you look through, they've provided you with some of the services that they provide and the amount of people that have participated in those services. They've also outlined their income and expenditures for the year. You can see that Stark County is the major provider of revenue to this account. When it comes to cities, we certainly are by far the largest city that donates to Sunrise Youth Bureau. And we also are the largest benefactor of the services that they provide. And you can see that as you walk through. For instance, in the educational classes, they provided 327 classes in Dickinson with over 5,000 students participating in those classes. And they had a total of 6,000 students participating. So the vast majority of services are provided within Stark County and thereby the city of Dickinson. So they do a wonderful job, and it's a very unique program. It's not offered in that many different counties. I happen to be on the board, so I'm not going to toot their horn too much, but they really do a wonderful job providing a wonderful service in the city of Dickinson. And if you like, I can certainly ask the executive director to come and present to the commission on their services and what they do. The last item then is just a thank you note from Western Wellness and Domestic Violence, Rape and Abuse Crisis Center. They were a recipient of a grant from the city of Dickinson, and they wrote a nice little comment about their appreciation with regards to the receipt of those funds. So I wanted to share that with you this evening.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kessel.
That concludes my reports.
Any questions for Mr. Kessel or comments on the Sunrise Youth Bureau or the Western Wellness Domestic Violence Rape Crisis Center? Now we'll move on to public safety. We'll have Fire Chief Seebach come up, and I know he's kind of in a hurry tonight because they are doing a great thing tonight. They are cooking. Well, I'll let him tell you about it.
Thank you, Mayor Decker, as I step back in time. Thank you, Mayor Decker and Commissioners. First of all, tonight I want to address three of our volunteer members that have recently retired from the fire department. And their years of service to the fire department and to the community definitely are worth recognition. Captain Kent Mortensen retired in December 2017, 23 years of service. Secretary Treasurer, who also was a captain on the department, Barney Tomanik, with 30 years of service, January 31st. Ed Sticka, Assistant Chief Ed Sticka, March 31 will be retiring with 42 years of service to the Dickinson Fire Department and the Dickinson community. Definitely something that needs to be brought to the attention of the public and to the commission. Also, all three of those members will be staying with our department in the capacity of a reserve member. They'll be helping build a reserve program as we envision our past members with the years of experience that they have, that they can still bring to the table in committee work and in mentoring new firefighters and in other aspects other than active line firefighting. They're going to help us strengthen and build that program, and I'm very appreciative to all three of them that they have committed to stay with us in that capacity. As Mayor Decker stated, I will be begging your leave now as the Dickinson Fire Department is providing, cooking, and serving the meal at Queen of Peace Parish for the Angel 37 project this evening. So I'll be leaving to join the serving line. Thank you very much.
All right. Any questions for Chief Seebach?
What's for dinner?
Sausage, eggs, pancakes, something a little different.
I love
Perfect.
Yeah.
A breakfast
Breakfast
supper.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
it'll
perfect.
be a breakfast supper, and somebody told me that there's a special name for that, but I can't remember exactly what it was.
Delicious.
There you go.
Thank
Delicious.
you very much.
All right, we have a little bit of time. Chief Dossinger, I think we can fit in the RFP.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the Commission. The Dickinson Police Department issued a request for proposal for virtual judgmental use of force and weapons simulator training system, which was approved at a prior City Commission meeting. The Dickinson Police Department received only one submission. The submission was made by Virtra Incorporated of Tempe, Arizona, and received by the RFP deadline of March 12th of 2018. The proposal from Virtra Incorporated meets the project objective, project scope, and specifications, and deadline established by the RFP. The Dickinson Police Department recommends the approval for the purchase of the virtual judgmental use of force and weapons simulator training system from Virtra Incorporated in the amount of $226,292.19. This purchase falls in the budget parameters established for this project.
Okay, any questions for Chief Dossinger?
Chief Dossinger, so it will be ready to roll September 1st, 2018, or is that?
They're about 60 days from the point of ordering it. Our room is ready for it. I gave a tour to Administrator Kessel a couple days ago. The room is carpeted, painted, ceiling is done. It's just a matter of ordering it and having the installers come out and install it and train us on it. And they recommend it takes roughly about 60 days for that process to occur.
That's exciting.
Even though we've received only one bid, it's a narrow market as far as who could fulfill the requirements, and this one fit all of the requirements that you were looking for.
That is correct, and then some. There's some nice things about this. We'd be able to take panoramic pictures, video, of target-rich environments in our community, such as the schools. We'll be able to come back, plug in those panorama pictures, GPS coordinates, and we'll be able to input them into our simulator.
Perfect.
And this is, I would take it like Commissioner Altman says, it's pretty narrow market who provides. So I'm sure our police staff is trained on something very similar, if not the exact same system somewhere.
That's correct. It is a narrow market. We did advertise this on the city website, where there's an RFP section, and also in the paper.
Okay. Any other questions, Mr. Kessel?
I just wanted to mention, President Decker, that when I attended the ICMA conference last, they did have this set up, this very system set up, and I was able to watch others go through. I could have done it myself, but I was scared I was going to hurt myself. They did. It's an amazing system, and this will certainly be the envy of North Dakota by having it, and it should allow more trainings to happen here at the Public Safety Center by virtue of having this.
That's what I like to hear.
Correct. And this not only be a tool for the Dickinson Police Department, but other local agencies as well.
And a recruiting tool.
Correct.
Which we always need more of.
Yes.
Okay. If there are no further questions or comments, I would look for a motion on this bid.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve with a second. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Altman's.
Aye.
Mr. Frederick.
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. RFP is approved.
Thank you.
And now up, it is 5:30, and I think what you're all waiting for in the audience. Mrs. Murtha, are you going to introduce our guests?
It would be my pleasure to introduce our guests. We have Jason Wall here, who is the director of the, I'm going to hopefully pronounce this correctly, the Medical Marijuana Division of the North Dakota Department of Health. And in the back is Tara Bradner, who is an Assistant Attorney General with the North Dakota Attorney General's Office and the attorney for the Department of Health. Both individuals have been very much involved in the process of legislation relating to legislation and administrative rule development relating to medical marijuana at the state level, and are here to present to us today to give us an overview. As you all are probably aware, the Dickinson area has been designated one of the 8 areas in the state which could potentially have a dispensary located in it for this program. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Good evening. As Jan said, my name is Jason Wall. I'm the director of the Division of Medical Marijuana within the Department of Health. Here tonight to provide the commission information and be happy to answer any questions that the commission may have as well. The first part to start in regards to any presentation is to make sure that there's a clear understanding that I am not an attorney. No legal advice being provided tonight to the commission from this side of the podium. Jan sat with us today for a little over 2 hours, I believe, with other local officials to answer questions, and had a very good discussion from our end in regards to providing information in regards to the program. With the program implementation, the slide that you have up on your screen right now is a snapshot that we developed to show the major steps in implementing the medical marijuana program within the state of North Dakota. This slide is available on the Division of Medical Marijuana's website and will be updated as we accomplish more of what we see as the major steps in getting a program fully functional. Where we're at right now in regards to the program, last week was a fairly major week for program implementation, as the administrative rules for the program did receive their required legislative review. The Legislative Administrative Rules Committee did not hold over the administrative rules, so those rules become effective on April 1st. Also, late last week, the Department of Health did open up the open application period for manufacturing facilities. The manufacturing facilities within this program will be the entities that will be doing the growing of the marijuana and also the processing and producing the products that will be transferred to dispensaries for sale to the qualifying patients. The slide does identify the steps after manufacturing facilities are selected to be registered. The dispensaries would be a step that would take place after the manufacturing facilities are selected, and we would then eventually have begin accepting applications from potential qualifying patients and designated caregivers. When we talk about medical marijuana programs within the United States, there are 30 states that have medical marijuana laws, as well as the District of Columbia. 8 of those 30 states do have fully functional recreational programs, and an additional state will now be implementing a law that was recently passed as well for recreational. The medical marijuana program started with an initiated measure passed back in November of 2016. Implementation of the initiated measure was suspended by the 2017 legislature in January as the legislature worked on a law for the medical marijuana program that became effective then on April 18th. The one thing we always want to identify in presentations and providing information about the medical marijuana program is the fact that marijuana is still illegal under the federal law. While the state has established and the department is required to implement a medical marijuana program, the Federal Controlled Substance Act at this time has not been modified or changed, and marijuana is still listed in that act. This requires the Department of Health to ensure that this program is a very well-regulated program. And the reason we look for a well-regulated program is to protect the public's health and safety, as well as the qualifying patient's health and safety. In addition, since this is a federal illegal drug, we attempt to have a well-regulated program to lower the risk of the federal government having concerns in regards to program implementation and program operations. The legislature that in 2017 did pass a medical marijuana chapter that was codified in the North Dakota Century Code. As I had mentioned, the administrative code will become effective and the requirements within the administrative rules become effective on April 1. The Division of Medical Marijuana right now has 3 employees. We do anticipate having another employee potentially hired starting June 1 with additional possible staffing as the program continues to be implemented. Number of definitions within the program and certain terminology that was spelled out by the 2017 legislature. How the program and major components of the program are on the slide that you have up in front of you here. One of the main ones is the healthcare providers, who are defined within state law as a physician or an advanced practice registered nurse. Healthcare providers will be the ones responsible for signing a written certification form. There are no prescriptions within the medical marijuana program. Healthcare providers sign a form authorizing potential qualifying patients to have access to what we term usable marijuana under the program. A registry identification card will be issued to all approved applications received by the department for qualifying patients, designated caregivers, as well as those individuals and agents associated with manufacturing facilities, dispensaries, as well as a laboratory that the department will procure to conduct compliance testing. The registry identification cards that will be issued and how they will be issued, there's some information on this slide that talk about the application fees and certain requirements. What we like to point out is the registered designated caregivers, as well as those individuals associated with manufacturing facilities and dispensaries, do have to pass a criminal history record check that will be performed upon their initial application, as then the law requires every other renewal. Annual renewal for their cards, and they are not allowed to have a registry identification card from the department if they have a felony conviction or a misdemeanor drug-related conviction within the last 5 years of the date of their application. When we talk about marijuana, and if you ever look at the statute and requirements in the statute and certain maximum amounts allowed and other limits that the legislature placed on the program, you'll see THC and CBD quite frequently. We just point out that THC is really the psychoactive part of marijuana, where CBD is typically the non-psychoactive. The CBD products typically have a lower THC level associated with them compared to some of the other usable marijuana products, mainly the dried leaves and flowers.
Mr. Wall, just before you move on, can we, just to clarify, CBD though is still illegal in North Dakota unless it is dispensed from a licensed or excuse me, a registered dispensary, is that correct?
What I point to in relation to that question is the guidance that's on the Office of Attorney General's website. In regards to CBD, the short answer is typically you're correct. There are certain provisions about CBD, and CBD really has become a more of a national, almost world topic, as the research is showing a number of benefits in relation to CBD. The fact that CBD is part of marijuana, the information from the federal government says that it is still illegal. So there is disagreement with individuals who probably currently are selling CBD, would probably disagree with the information that's on the Office of Attorney General website, but that comes from DEA, I believe. Came from DEA, and so that would be the interpretation that the state would follow.
Thank you.
I had mentioned usable marijuana. This is a term that was established within state law to identify under the program, really the marijuana that's dispensed is termed and classified as usable marijuana. The state law does not identify this as medicine. It is considered to be usable marijuana. When we talk about the types of usable marijuana under the program, it really follows on this slide, starting on the left, the dried leaves and flowers, and making a half U in regards to the other types of products that are available. State law does identify that dried leaves and flowers require a special authorization from the healthcare provider. Without that special authorization from the healthcare provider, a qualifying patient would be limited to the other 5 types of usable marijuana. The other part that we typically point out on this slide is that dried leaves and flowers are not, minors are not eligible for dried leaves and flowers, excuse me. A minor under this program is identified as an individual under the age of 19. Minors also are not allowed to enter a dispensary to purchase the usable marijuana. Minors will not do the purchasing or the possessing of these products. They will need to have a registered designated caregiver who will purchase the usable marijuana on their behalf and also provide it to them or administer the product. There are other requirements listed there on the slide in regards to other areas. The other item that the legislature identified specifically on usable marijuana for minors was that it could not have a concentration level of more than 6% THC. The department in the administrative rules did identify testing requirements in an attempt to ensure then that the pediatric usable marijuana under the program meets that 6% requirement. Qualifying patients need to have a qualifying medical condition to be eligible in the program. This slide identifies the medical conditions authorized within state law. A healthcare provider will need to identify on the written certification form which of these medical condition or conditions the individual does have. State law requires that healthcare provider to have a bona fide provider-patient relationship with the qualifying patient. I'm not going to read through this slide. We just bring it to the commission's attention that really there needs to be this relationship that meets the requirements that the statute sets out. That relationship cannot be for the sole purpose of providing a written certification for the medical use of marijuana. This slide provides you a very high-level overview of the process for the program in regards to how an individual will be able to purchase and possess usable marijuana under the program.
Mr. Wall, at the League of Cities, we sat through this, and you added, I guess, one caveat on this slide where you said about you can register online, but you cannot pay online. Can you explain a little bit about that process?
What the department is looking at as it implements the program is what we've termed a hybrid application process for qualifying patients. They will be able to complete application information online and submit such information. However, the state law for this program does not allow the department to accept credit card payments. We're only authorized at this point in time to accept checks or money orders. So while you're going to be able to provide information to the department application as far as date of birth, address, a copy of your state issued ID, your 2x2 picture, you could also, we are trying to have the system allow you to upload the 2x2 picture that we are required by law to obtain. We won't be able at this time to accept a payment online, so we would need to have a check mailed in.
Okay, thank you.
I've tried to use the terms manufacturing facilities and dispensaries. We know there's a lot of confusion in relation to the program because you hear compassion centers, and the initiated measure was for a Compassionate Care Act. In state law, they use the term compassion center throughout that Century Code chapter when they refer to both manufacturing facilities and dispensaries. But really, when we say compassion center, we're talking both manufacturing facility and dispensary. We attempt to identify both of those as we provide information to the public and do presentations like this to try to eliminate certain confusion. State law does identify a maximum of 2 manufacturing facilities unless the department is able to identify that there needs to be an increase in the access to usable marijuana. Since the program is new and is being implemented, the department does not have any evidence to be able to make a conclusion that there needs to be an increase in either manufacturing facilities or dispensaries at this time for increasing the access for qualifying patients. You can see that on this slide as well, there are certain limitations on manufacturing facilities and dispensaries. Mainly, the manufacturing facilities have a 1,000 plant limit that they cannot exceed. They do also are allowed to have 50 plants specific to research and development. Those plants are not allowed to move over into their production and processing part of their operations, though. With the 8 dispensaries, the law does identify a maximum of 8 in regards to this program. and the department a while ago provided information on its plan for the dispensaries and registration of dispensaries. Rather than the department identifying a specific city in which a dispensary was to be located due to various concerns about possible local zoning or an applicant having concerns or problems with finding a location in a specified city, the department established 8 regions. These regions are comprised of 8 locations. They're centered with a city in that location, and it's a 50-mile radius around that location. This map is now available on our division's website in an interactive format, so it will allow you to scroll in to finite detail to identify specifically if a certain location is in or out. Dickinson is in the lower left quadrant of this map. We refer to this as the Dickinson region. But where a dispensary is ultimately to be located in that region is yet to be determined. What will happen is the department would open up an application period for that region, and we would accept applications as the proposed location of the applicant is within that 50-mile radius shown for the Dickinson region. At this time, the manufacturing facility application is open. That closes on April 19th. Depending on the number of applicants received, we have a tentative timeline of attempting to identify the 2 applicants that will be eligible to register in the middle of May. Once those 2 entities are identified, we will be able to visit with those entities to get a more firm timeline on when they believe they will have product available. That will then allow us to set a time period for an open application period for dispensaries. So at this time, we'd like to say we are not accepting any applications for dispensaries or from qualifying patients or registered designated caregivers, but we are now accepting applications for entities to be a registered manufacturing facility.
Mr. Wall, the timeline for accepting at least the patients, what are you looking at there?
The applications for patients will be opened up once the dispensary open application period is available. What the department will do is open up an application period for qualifying patients and designated caregivers prior to even the usable marijuana being available at dispensaries to allow us time to process a potential influx of applications and to make sure we have ample time for the registration cards to be mailed back to qualifying patients and caregivers prior to the usable marijuana being in dispensaries for sale.
And on the applications for the manufacturing and the dispensary, could you walk through the process for the public? Because I'm sure there'll be a lot of people watching this. An idea of the fees? Are the fees refundable once you submit your application and such?
The application packet for the manufacturing facilities is available on the Division of Medical Marijuana website, which is www.ndhealth.gov/mm. On the website are the instructions for completing an application. Also identifies the process and the timelines and deadlines associated with the application. To submit an application to the department, potential applicants need to ensure that they complete all required forms, follow the instructions that are provided, and also include a $5,000 non-refundable application fee. The non-refundable application fee was a requirement established within state law. So part of the application process for manufacturing facilities and dispensaries will follow the same requirement, is to submit a non-refundable application fee. Once the application period closes, the department will determine whether or not applications are complete. Those that are determined to be complete will then go through a review process. There's scoring elements associated with how these applications will be evaluated. That's included in the application materials. The administrative rules identify then that the 2 highest scoring applicants will be eligible to register.
Okay, and then I guess another follow-up question. Any part of this process for the manufacturing, in the application itself, is there anything required of, say, a city or a county to be part of that packet being submitted to you? Do they have to come in and declare where they're going to be located or any of that?
One of the requirements in the application packet, and it's a specific form, I believe Form B, is going to be, has to be completed by a local zoning authority representative or official. They will need to check a specific box in regards to indicating whether that proposed manufacturing facility location is in compliance with the local zoning requirements for that particular location.
And I would think that would be the same then for the dispensaries or the care centers.
State law requires the same evidence from local zoning officials for the dispensary locations as well.
Thank you.
With the dispensary map, excuse me, the other thing to point out is the qualifying patients can visit any one of the dispensaries located within the state. Also, due to the fact that we are a rural state and there were concerns in regards to access to the usable marijuana products, the rules do authorize dispensaries to provide a home delivery service. Whether or not dispensaries will do that will be a decision that they will have to make. The rules do identify transportation requirements if the dispensary is to provide a home delivery service.
So they just can't mail it out.
Correct. It won't be going in the mail. This is a specific North Dakota program. North Dakota does not recognize or have reciprocity in place in regards to cards issued in other states. The patients and the designated caregivers will need to purchase the usable marijuana specifically from a registered dispensary registered by the Department of Health. Also, the healthcare providers that are signing the written certification forms need to be licensed in North Dakota and have a license in good standing. As part of the application process, the department will verify that information on applications submitted. Here's the specific zoning requirement in regards to providing evidence. The other zoning requirement within state law is the second bullet of that slide. The other provision the legislature put in regards to a manufacturing facility and dispensary is that they cannot be located within 1,000 feet of a pre-existing public or private school. We had a number of questions from local government officials in regards to what the Department of Health will consider a school. So we did identify, for the purposes of this program, what we will determine a school is. And mainly when you look at school, it'll be an entity that's in the Department of Public Instruction's approved school listing, or it's on the Department of Public Instruction's Head Start list, and also any public or private institution of higher education or career and technical education school. There are restrictions on the use of the products that will be dispensed as part of this program. For example, the law does not allow usable marijuana to be possessed or consumed on school grounds or on a school bus or a school van used for school purposes. Additional restrictions were placed into the state law for the medical marijuana program. The same state law requirements that exist for smoking and vaping in public places also are applicable to the medical marijuana program. This would conclude a very brief presentation, excuse me, in regards to information we wanted to provide the commission tonight. I know League of Cities, we went for, I think, over 75 minutes providing information and answering questions. What the division would like to point out to members of the commission as well as the public, that if you're looking for information or have questions in regards to the program, the division's website is really your best source of information to look for updates on the program, kind of where the program is at for implementation. There's a number of frequently asked question documents out there tailored specifically to qualifying patients, manufacturing facilities, also the healthcare providers as well. We do our best to provide status updates on the program, keeping in mind it is at this time just the three of us.
Okay, well, thank you. Any questions, commissioners?
I just had one question. Any idea when you think the availability will be to the consumer? I mean, rough timeline?
I'm glad you asked that question because I didn't get to it when I was answering in regards to dispensary applications. Right now, the department is looking at the usable marijuana being available for qualifying patients near the end of this calendar year.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Kessel?
Mr. Wall, can you talk to how the state employees can they participate in this program? If they can't, why not? Could you just address that a little bit and how that may trickle down?
From my perspective, I could talk to the Department of Health in regards to the state of North Dakota as a whole. I'd probably look to legal counsel. Because the Department of Health receives a large amount of federal funds, and this is a federal illegal drug, the Department of Health will continue to have a zero tolerance policy in regards to drugs and alcohol.
That question specifically because we also receive a great
Federal
deal of federal funds. And it's a question that we're going to have to address in our HR policies. So it will be before you at a later date.
Any further questions, comments? Thank you, Mr. Wall.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to engineering. First item up is a sidewalk improvement district resolution. Mr. Kubis.
Thank you, Commission President Decker. Similar to the hazardous tree removal resolution, this is our sidewalk improvement district resolution. Again, it's a voluntary program, as it has been in the past several years. It will not be available to new construction, similar with the past. Any developed property, though, will be able to utilize the program to either install, replace, or repair their sidewalks. The big change between last year's program and this year's program, the resolution is nearly identical except for a change in the number, is the budget of the program. We've increased that budget from $75,000 last year to $200,000 this year. We even have a little more revenue to utilize with some repayments of past year's specials. But the intent is that the city will become a bigger user of the program as well, to fill in a lot of the gaps that we have on publicly owned property. The discussion we had last year was that in the future, whether that's in 2019 or some year beyond that, that this program would become mandatory. We'd prioritize the needs of the city and start picking out properties that don't have sidewalks on them now, developed properties that don't have sidewalks. When we started looking into this, we realized that we had a lot of property that didn't have sidewalks. And so the big increase in the budget was to start chipping away at some of those properties that the city has. We have a lot of properties around parks that don't have sidewalks, so things like that. It'll be a balancing act, though, to make sure that we leave a good budget available to the public to utilize this program. I think people are getting the idea that this program will become mandatory at some point in the future. That's been the discussion we've had at the commission meetings in past years. So we hope that the usership of the program, still being voluntary, increases this year. So with that, I could sure open it up to any questions that you have. We have the project that it's ready to bid out upon passage of the resolution, which, if I'm doing my math right, would be Resolution 7-2018.
That would be correct.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Kupas? Comments?
How are we gonna prioritize the list? Is that something you're gonna do, Greg, or?
Yeah, we've been working on it. Right now, we don't have the prioritization finalized, but what we've discussed was that we would take those areas, probably breaking the city down into districts, because it's going to be a lot of sidewalks. Taking a look at parks and schools as priority number one, are really our main corridors. People tend to walk on those main corridors more than on the side streets. So anywhere where we have a gap in sidewalk on our main corridors, and then other big pedestrian generators like schools, churches, things like that,
Yeah,
shopping centers.
Along, 21st there's a long stretch that we don't have anything, so.
Absolutely, yeah. And that one would qualify, there's a church, I think there's a particular stretch you're concerned about.
Yeah.
There's a church there, but it's just on the main corridor. It leads to a school. It's not necessarily close to a school, but it leads to a school. I think that might be an area where we look at a 10-foot trail. It would really tie into our trail system as well.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Kupas? Hearing none, I'd look for a motion on Resolution 7-2016.
So move.
Second.
Oh.
7/2018.
No, 2018. 7/2018. Any further discussion? We'll go ahead and vote. Mr. Friedrich?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Resolution 20-2018, or excuse me, 7-2018. I'm getting ahead of myself. I wanna approve a lot of resolutions, okay? So 7-2018 is approved. Mr. Kupas, you're up again.
Thank you. The next item under engineering is a bid opening we had for the water reclamation facility. The project is called the Effluent Bypass to Cell 4. In the past, you've heard presentations from Public Works Director Zuroff and the plant manager, Greg Stack, on how we're using the lagoon cell number 4 as storage for the resale water that we have right now. And to fill that up, we've used some temporary piping in the past, which is just that, it's temporary. So we put together a project that Apex Engineering had designed that would do some permanent piping and allow us to either divert all the water to cell 4 or have the plant operate like it does now, and just run the water back through the reuse water line to the booster station. So as you can see on the map, maybe a little hard to see with the lights. There you go. Thank you. This piping takes it just a short ways out of the plant and diverts it to a pipe that's already in place, and then so it can go straight into cell number 4. And we opened those bids a few weeks ago now. This was actually on our last agenda that got canceled. We had 2 bids, and the low bid was from BK Consulting in the amount of $219,600. That was within the engineer's estimated range of construction costs. And Apex has evaluated those bids, and along with city staff, would recommend awarding the project to BK Consulting. With that, I'd open it up to any questions that you might have.
Any questions or comments for Mr. Kupas on this project?
Yes, just a comment. While this will be an initial expense up front, should actually be a revenue generator on the backside too.
Commissioner Oltmans, it will be. In fact, the revenue has already been budgeted for from previous year's water resales. So, and we anticipate that this will easily allow us to generate more revenue, if there needs to be more improvements, to add more capacity to this resale, call it the resale program of
Sure.
of the water.
I get, just reading through this and not being an engineer on this bid, what are general conditions?
The bid item, general conditions?
Conditions.
Well, there's
Because there's a huge disparity from one bid to the next under general conditions.
There are, and I know we have Mr. Schneider here from Apex Engineering. He could probably speak more fluently to exactly what's included in the general conditions. And it's just where contractors put their dollars in the bid, kind of front-loading a bid, sometimes you might call it. But if you wouldn't mind, I'd have
Sure.
Mr. Schneider speak to that.
Good evening, Commissioners. Mayor Decker, to answer your question, the general conditions is a traditional bid item that includes the contract bonds and payment bonds that a contractor has to bid into the project. When we bid projects that have unit bid prices like this, where we bid footage of pipe, structures, different items, we always include a general conditions that covers contract bond prices. And unfortunately, on this project, the contractors that bid, one of them had a very high number, which, as Mr. Kubis alluded to, sometimes we refer to that as weighting their bid. The contractor that was low did not do that, of course, you see in the bid prices. So if that answers your question.
I guess
expand on
just
that
looking
any
through the
further.
bid process, there was, as you go through, there's one that there's 3 times as much in one, and then there's 6 times as much in another. So it's
Yeah, one had the manholes at 103,000 and the other one had it at 30.
30. That's what I'm just trying to understand. you
Yeah,
know.
it's the weighting the contractor did on their bid prices.
I look at work as work.
Right.
This way, generally, if you're going to execute something, companies should be pretty similar on construction, and then it's, and like I said, one's 3 times more than the other, and then another condition 6 times more than the other. It's just kind of confusing to us that, you know, basically write the checks. So,
Yeah, I really, I don't have anything other to add to it other than, you know, on a small project like this, whether they put their bid price in item A or item B, there's really a pretty definite amount of work that's gonna happen. It's not like we're going to add another 1,000 feet of pipe onto this job.
Right.
It just needs to go from A to B. So whether they weight an item heavily or lightly, we're just gonna build what we're gonna build. There's other projects where weighting it might throw off the final price a little bit. I really don't think this is one of those projects.
and these are the only 2 bids.
Correct, we only received 2 bids.
Okay. Any other questions, comments from commissioners? Thank you for the clarification. I would look for a motion on this bid on cell 4.
I'll make a motion to approve the bid.
Have a motion to approve on the bid for cell 4
Second.
in a second. Any further discussion or questions for Mr. Kubis? Hearing none, will vote. Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Mr. Friedrich?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. The bid is approved. We have a Energy Advisory Committee selection. Mr. Kubis.
Thank you, Commission President Decker. What we have is another appointment that we're asking the commission to consider here. We do have an energy committee that's in our code. It's in Chapter 40 of our code, and we meet very infrequently. As applications arise to drill wells within our ETZ, typically, could be within the city limits, but usually within the ETZ. This committee meets, reviews the plan that's presented to them, makes recommendations, possibly for changes, but ultimately makes a recommendation to this board, and then the applicant would receive a conditional use permit from the city. Since we meet so infrequently, in fact, the last time we met was 2015, when we went to get the group back together, we found we only had 4, and our code says that we need to have 5 people on this committee. We do have an application that's been submitted to the city, so we put it out there on social media to see if there was any interested applicants. And to date, we have received 1, which you have in front of you, from Mr. Tanner Rasmussen. There was a short attached bio. I visited with Mr. Rasmussen as well. He sounds like he's very eager to start becoming involved in the community. As you can see, he was new to the Dickinson area, a transplant from the Sidney, Montana area, I believe. So I guess what we're asking is your consideration to make an appointment to our Energy Advisory Committee. And then again, you know, this is a committee that I think all these people that we have on our committee, there's like I said, 4 right now. They've been there as long as I know, and we have no term limits on this committee, so it's maybe some future discussion that we talk about revisiting, you know, term limits, and if we want to get new applicants. I'm sure there's a lot of new people in the oil and gas industry that would be willing to serve on a board like this. So this would get us through the immediate crunch time, I guess, of filling our code requirements of 5 members.
And Mr. Kubis, the other 4 members are?
The other 4 members are Gene Burish, Eugene DeHonick, Dean Goodall, and Phil Wallace.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Kubis on Mr. Rasmussen? Not, I would look for a motion on the nomination of Mr. Rasmussen to the Energy Advisory Committee.
Mr. President, I'd make a motion to nominate Tanner Rasmussen to serve on the Energy Advisory Committee.
A motion to appoint Mr. Rasmussen
I'll second that.
in a second. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Mr. Friedrich?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Mr. Rasmussen is appointed to the Energy Advisory Committee.
Thank you.
We have nothing from Public Works, Planning, Building and Codes, Commissioners. Anything for the general public?
Nothing?
Mr. Friedrich, anything for the general public, Commission? Okay. I just have a couple things that I just wanted to go over quickly. Had a opportunity to travel to Minneapolis last week to be in front of the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library Board. I reinforced our commitment to the project and that our dollars were going to stay in Dickinson. Ultimately, through 2 days of discussion, the project, we're getting a presidential digital library in Dickinson, and the second part of the project will begin in Medora to follow later. It is very aggressive. We have to start construction by the end of this year on at least $14 million building. There's going to be a lot of people out in the public asking for some donations, because not only do we have to build this building, but we have to cover some of the O&M costs. So you're probably going to have some people going around and asking for some donations to help this project get off the ground. And I think this is going to be a great asset to the city and Dickinson State University, and it'll continue to add to our quality of life features. On that, we also had a meeting today of our Safety Tax Committee. And we reinforced within the committee that we are going to go forward with a 0.5% sales tax. Just get it on the fall ballot, and it will be a safety tax dedicated to our public safety. So that's,
When you bring up the library and you say "we," you also mean "they," because the city of Dickinson is not building the library, nor
no.
are we responsible. And so
No.
as you were talking about the "we," you were talking about the committee that you
Yes.
sat on or
Well,
interacted with, but it's
um,
they.
Yeah, it's they, yes.
Yeah.
I guess for clarification, it is a national board.
Yes.
There are many members. There's members from Texas and California, and Oregon, and, you know, Colorado. There is quite a bit of North Dakota on the board too, but ultimately, the decision and the consensus was made that his work that we've started at Dickinson State 18 years ago must continue.
Definitely.
And by all means, that is the property of Dickinson State University. They've worked for 18 years to establish this archive, and they will continue to work on it. The thing that was mind-boggling, what they've done in 18 years with basically 2 people and 50,000 documents, and there's another 100,000 plus documents to go. And the example was the Thomas Jefferson Library has been at this for 100 years. And they want to be a little bit faster than that. They want to expedite this, you know. And the project as a whole, like I said, there was a group that had concerns that the direction of the project was maybe going all to Medora, and there was a lot of concerns. Their infrastructure, their ability to retain a workforce. And in the end, the board decided that, and I'm not part of that board, the national board decided that his work, what they've been doing for the past 18 years, is first and foremost, and it has to continue. And that just leads to a lot of credit to the people that have been involved with this project for so long, and Senator Wardner and Vicki Steiner and Vaughn Johnson, and they advocating for the city of Dickinson, and even the professors that were from outside of our region saying what great work Dickinson State's been doing. So it's going to be fast and furious, and this fall we're hoping to see some dirt move. So
What's it mean for the cabin?
that was discussed also this morning. They want to have that cabin built. Now, is the cabin get built this year? They don't want it to hold up the main project, but they would like to have the cabin on site.
The cabin will still be in Dickinson.
Yes, the cabin would still be in Dickinson. The location right now will be determined, but they don't want that to hamper the actual library. That library is first and foremost to go up, and then if the cabin has to possibly be built after the other place is sited, then they will go forward with that. But there was a lot of energy in the room today, and people getting excited to go out and go back to their fundraising methods that they were using before. So I think this would be a great project. And that 27 acres can be another great piece in the city of Dickinson. I mean, when you look at Dickinson and you look at like our West River Center, you know, and you look at that ice skating rink, and you look at that softball and baseball fields that are right there, and you look at that new hospital, that new clinic, all in that area, and the possibility of what's going to happen at the high school, and the possibility of getting a CTE building, a career and technical education center, that you know, Senator Wardner is working on, and how we can interlink all of that into a great, you know, campus facility, and hopefully, you know, in the future, and I guess Mr. Kessel can give us an update. We had talked briefly about a feasibility study for an event center. Where are we working on that? And then I have one additional question that I will not forget. I'll jot it down so I don't get sidetracked.
Mr. President, can I ask a quick question
Sure.
in regards to the library? Is the board going to be able to use the original renderings that were done for the library? So that will be an additional cost to that project?
I wouldn't say additional. It's just they're going to have to pare down the structure that they have from that, and that was just a concept. What we saw, the big rolling bluff type, that was a concept more than an actual design. I think they were trying to, at that time, replicate the Badlands, and I don't think you could bring the Badlands to downtown Dickinson or onto campus of DSU correctly.
So to speed things along, are they going with the original architect? Or?
Yeah, well, it is JLG, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So JLG's, after the vote by the committee, or I mean, the board members in Minneapolis, they were diligently at work at the back of the room. They were sitting there with the construction people and JLG, and they were drawing out, because they know they have to move quickly to meet the intent of the state legislature, to have something started before the end of this year. So it will be aggressive, and there were concerns, especially on the fundraising side, as being that aggressive. So, but I'm pretty confident. You have a national board that reaches so many, into so many different fields. So I think they're well set to move forward with this. And I think the plans are is the whole board will be out here in June. So
The state didn't say they had to be vertical by the end of the year, did they? Just, I mean, if the foundations and site work started?
Correct, yeah,
Right.
correct.
Right.
They definitely have to show work to go vertical,
Right.
but they don't have to be vertical.
Okay.
right. And
Because that would be
You have
super
any-
aggressive.
I had the one final question, I guess, because we didn't cover it tonight. The theater.
Oh, the theater is expected to be on, the purchase agreement was shared back with the Odyssey Theater today. We expect that they'll be on an April agenda.
Okay.
And I just wanted to caution the commission a little bit. Part of the delay in getting it to you is the definition of the land itself. They have to go through a replat process. So when you get the purchase agreement, there's going to be a essentially meets and bounds description of the land, but that will be replaced because there's a due diligence period for them to do some work. By the time the due diligence period ends, we should have the platting done, so you'll have an exact description of the land transfer. So
There's a lot of people excited in town.
that's good. That's great. I'm glad to hear that. You wanted me to also address the feasibility study,
Yes.
I believe. And the Downtown Task Force has met on several occasions. We are not meeting in March simply because we have the 27th is the public input meeting. That'll be held at the library from 6 to 8. The public is invited and in fact encouraged to attend that meeting. So we did not hold the task force meeting because of that. We want our task force members to go and attend that meeting instead. So in our April meeting, I have a draft feasibility RFP available, and we'll be discussing it at that time. Hopefully they'll approve that. We'll bring it to the commission for your review.
And I know we have a very active commission, so I was just gonna ask Mrs. Murtha, if we all show up on this 27th, is there, we're good?
We're advertising. You'll be good.
Okay,
Okay.
good.
I encourage all of you to attend.
Okay, well, that's all I have, so anything else, commissioners? Next up is public issues of city concern, not on the agenda. If you have a public issue not on our agenda, please come forward. I think Mr., well,
Thank you, Mr. President. On the lighter side, I want to inform you of two events the police department has coming up in the near future. The first one is the 10th annual Daddy-Daughter Dance, scheduled for Friday, April 27th and Saturday, April 28th. This is an event that's definitely growing every year, and we had it divided up into 2 nights. So if you're interested in attending, please give us a call at 456-7755. We also have information out on our Facebook page and our website as far as registering for that. And the other event is our Police Firemen's Ball, scheduled for April 14th, which is going to be at the Grand Dakota Lodge at the Ramada. If you are interested in attending that, please get in touch with us as well at that same number for tickets. So, thank you.
all right, thank you.
Chief?
Hi, Commission President Decker and Commissioners. My name is Jennifer Strange, Executive Director of the Downtown Dickinson Association, and just wanted to take this opportunity to thank Administrator Kessel for making the Tuesday, March 27th Town Square Public Forum aware to everybody. And the City of Dickinson, in conjunction with the Downtown Dickinson Association, will be presenting this public forum about the Dickinson Downtown Town Square project. It's going to be an exciting and interactive 2 hours. It will start at 6 p.m. and go until 8 p.m. and it will be held at the Dickinson Area Public Library Community Room. Full refreshments will be served, so if you want to come straight from work, you don't need to worry about having dinner first. We're grateful for the many downtown restaurants and the Dickinson Area Public Library for their donations of appetizers and beverages. And the Downtown Dickinson Association Board will be donating homemade desserts. Some of them might be homemade by Walmart, but you know how that goes. So just to give you a very brief overview, this is very much about quality of life issues like President Decker has been talking about, and is another one of the many exciting projects that the City of Dickinson and stakeholders are involved in. We would be honored and happy if the commissioners were able to attend. Also, the Downtown Task Force will be there, the DDA Board will be there, and JLG Architects will be providing a 30-minute presentation at the beginning of the public forum. So that is where we will all get to learn kind of the timeline of where this project has been, where it is right now, ideas for how it might move forward based on the conceptual designs that were done by a different architect back in January of 2015. And then JLG will be hosting 4 interactive, I love this phrase, information stations. It's like something from Schoolhouse Rock. But anyway, so there will be 4 information stations that the public will be invited to make their way around. And they can interact in surveys, they can interact in, they're gonna have whiteboards, you can write your ideas on them, Post-its, and then they will be kind of gathering together the different ideas in different groupings. And then they will be, in addition to the Town Square design team and the Downtown Task Force, compiling all of this information that is gathered at this public forum, and will use that to render their design, which will then be presented at the next public forum. So it's a really valuable opportunity for the public to come in and share with all of us how they would see their lives happening in the Town Square area downtown, and also give us some great ideas on how to move forward with activating that space in small ways that can make a difference as quickly as possible, and then kind of a long-range sort of dream vision of how that will manifest. So everybody please come a week from tonight, 6 to 8 p.m. at the Dickinson Area Public Library. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else have any concerns? Not on our agenda.
Commissioner President
Oh,
Decker,
yep,
can I ask?
yep.
While you're there, would you like to give a high-level overview of the April 4th upcoming meeting that the governor will be attending?
Sure. Thanks, Administrator Kessel. Administrator Kessel and myself are leading an effort with a woman named Sarah Otta Coleman from the Department of Commerce in Bismarck to bring Governor Doug Burgum to Dickinson on April 4th of this year. That is just 2 weeks from tomorrow, I believe. And that will be part of his Main Street Initiative North Dakota project. And we are moving forward with an agenda that will include a whirlwind city bus tour. And there will be a small group of about 15 people on that bus tour. And we are working out the route right now. And it will end conceivably at the Town Square, which is currently under development, as we all know. And that will give Governor Burgum a chance to see what we're talking about with the Town Square project. I would like to point out to the commission as well as to viewers that the governor's Main Street Initiative really does focus on downtown areas, and during our phone conferences with the Department of Commerce, they have encouraged us to really narrow things down to have it be primarily about the downtown core and some of the Renaissance zone. So just so that you know, we're not trying to exclude anybody, we're trying to meet the parameters that the state has provided us with for these Main Street Initiative visits. Once we get to the Town Square after the short bus tour, we will get off the bus and then we will do a short walking tour, and we'll be pointing out some of the historic preservation projects that have gone on and been so successful in helping our downtown grow into the type of desirable gathering downtown area. That is our goal. And then at that point, we will make a visit to 2 different businesses in the downtown area, and then our Main Street Initiative visit will end at the library, where we will have a 1 hour and 45-minute roundtable about the Governor's Main Street Initiative. I think it's important to point out that it's been made clear to us that this is not a town hall type of meeting, so it wouldn't be a situation where the governor would be taking questions or talking policy outside of the Main Street Initiative. So there will be several state officials traveling with the governor, and then there will be a group of 25 to 30 invited people to be part of this larger roundtable conversation. And just so the public knows, the public is invited to attend and be the audience of that roundtable discussion. And then it will end with a brief 15-minute press conference that the governor's office is setting up. So that will be from roughly 2:30 to 7 p.m. on Wednesday, April 4th. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if I can find the answer to them in the information we have so far.
If I could, the only thing that I'd like to augment, very nice, you did a nice job, is that the governor's, he will facilitate the evening meeting, and he would like to see a lot of young people there. He'd like to see, in fact, a third of the audience be young people. So young people being 25 or less. So I would really encourage you to bring, you don't qualify, Commissioner Frederick. But your son does. So if I mention it specifically so that you could make invitations to young people to come to the event. It's really important that as we plan for the future, they're involved in that future. So.
Absolutely. Thanks for adding that. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Thank you. Anyone else with city concern not on the agenda? Please come forward. Seeing no one else from the public, I would look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.